All right, it's good to see you again, Brad. How are you doing?
Hey Patrick, good, good. How are you?
Good. It's a nice Saturday afternoon for me here, and I know it's a Saturday evening for you over there. So I know we've been trying to. Last time we got together, we said we were going to try to keep something kind of consistent, and so I think sticking to one of these at least on the weekend is probably a uh, as consistent as we can get, huh?
Yes,
So,
I would
because we're
agree.
trying to get some other. We almost had another guest from Australia on, but we weren't able to get him on just because of the time zone this time around. And so hopefully
Right.
next time we can get some other folks on there. Excited to network with some other stringers or people in the industry. And I just was listening to one of the one of the symposium. I know we're still talking about the symposium that just happened, the ERSA, but yeah, one of the sessions had to do with the Wimbledon stringer, and then also uh, the head manager talking about what's coming up with the new head strings, and
Yeah.
he was talking about some of the new strings, and then their second generation of that stringing machine that they have, which it looks pretty decent. I mean, I like that. I like the looks of that. And then also they are going to. I don't know if you listen to that. I don't know if
I
everybody else knows that, but Head is going to come out with a natural gut string.
I didn't know. I haven't listened to that one yet. I just caught up
Okay,
on
well,
the
I
book.
won't I won't spoil it all for you, but yeah, they are coming out with a natural gut tennis string so that way they can kind of round out their line of strings because they really want to be branded as more of a string company more so than they have in the past, right? Because I think in some areas they've really struggled and so forth, but and of course they made some indication that it is coming out of Australia. So that kind of tells you this could be made from clip, right? Clip might.
Okay.
I'm just guessing because they
Right.
said it's made in Australia, and I don't know any other natural gut strings that are made in Australia. I know there
Yeah.
might be a few, but clip is the first one that came to mind for me. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of exciting. They've added some a couple more strings in their line. They added a hybrid. Um, you know, it's more for the recreation and the all around. Not necessarily for touring pros, but more for the regular the general market. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. There's some other things there too, but I just wanted to kind of touch on that real quick. But because we were actually here today, because we really want to talk about the business of tennis, right?
Yeah.
Starting the stringing business or uh, taking that stringing business to the next level. What are some of our thoughts? What are some things that we've tried that have worked, or what are some things that maybe haven't been that successful, or how can we help somebody, take that to the next level? But I think maybe the first thing we should talk about is why would anybody want to have a stringing business, Brad?
Well, I think for the majority of people, it has to do with just their own budget and saving money on your stringing. So most of the people I know who string started because they started breaking strings quite a bit, and parents wanted them to save some money, so they bought a machine and learned how to string on their own rackets, and then eventually, your buddies and your teammates and this and that. And so that's kind of how I started stringing. Just my brother and I would started breaking quite a few strings, and we could get the synthetic gut prints for maybe $253 a set back in 1986, 87, or we could take it to someone and they'd charge 21, $22 for it. So the it was kind of an easy a decision from my father.
Yeah.
We're all going to learn how to string, including my dad. And so he's the one that really taught us. He's the one that had the patience to read through the manual and figure it out.
Right.
So
And a lot, I think a lot of people, that's a story for a lot of people, kind of like just out of necessity, kind of like, you're starting to break more strings. It's getting expensive. We can buy an inexpensive stringing machine for, X amount of dollars. And, you can learn, not only can you, take care of your own rackets, but you can learn in basically a new trade. You can learn something that might be interested, especially if you're more technical, you like technical things. Maybe at first that's not the reason why you started. It was more maybe out of necessity. And then you started to maybe like it a little bit more, or you were like thinking, wow, actually people have been asking me, because once they know that you, maybe your friends that you're hitting with, or people that you're around in the tennis community starts knowing that maybe that you have a stringing machine and that you string, and you're like, oh, I tried this string and I like it, or have you tried this one yet? And for people who just take their racket maybe to a tennis shop periodically, once every 3 months or 6 months or whatever, they don't really think about it maybe in that light, like, oh yeah, I could try out some new strings, it's not going to cost me that much. So if you are, as a friend, who's stringing, maybe they can get you into something new, get you trying some new strings, and so then all of a sudden maybe you've created a business and you didn't even realize it.
Right. Right. That's sort of what happened with me. I just was able to string, and when I went and played some tournaments, back when I tried to play some of the pro tournaments, the minor leagues, there was a satellite tour before futures were around,
Mm-hmm.
and with the satellite tour, you had to commit to 4 weeks of tournaments. And depending on how you did the first 3 weeks, if you made the fourth week, then you were eligible for ATP points. So the first satellite I played, the first week was Mobile, Alabama. The second week was Charleston, South Carolina. Then we went up to Elkin, North Carolina. Then we drove to Little Rock, Arkansas. And so, when you're on the road for 4 weeks, you're practicing a lot, you're playing a lot of tournaments. I just brought my stringing machine with me. And the tournaments, a lot of times, they had their own official stringer at the tournament. And they were charging, a decent amount of money. So I would just be off site, string my rackets, and, eventually players, hey, what do you charge? I'm like, I don't, but let me think about it. And then something cheaper than what they're charging at the tournament. So I just started
It's more
stringing for
convenient.
players.
It's more convenient too, because you're there, you're in the same hotel room or you're nearby,
Right.
and you don't have to go drive around finding a tennis shop or something like that. Or sometimes if it's on site, then that's different. But
Right.
some of
Right.
the
Yeah, it
small
was
tournaments.
nice. It was nice. So I strung a lot. When I was especially out in California, I played a circuit out in California and Fairfield and Danville, up in Reading, and
Mhm.
I strung quite a few of the players' rackets out there, and it was nice. And it was, made a little extra money, and just, learned how to be a better stringer. And
Yeah.
I had an Echelon machine at the time, a hand crank, and it was a great machine. So that was kind of why I did it, but I had no real thought that I would continue to do it when I finished playing,
Mhm.
and that's been new for me in the last 2 or 3 years,
Right.
where I've actually started more of a business, where you can see I've got a lot of sets
Mhm.
behind me. I have probably 10 or 15 reels behind me. So I've started a more of a business now, and I've got a whole different mental approach to it now, where I'm actually kind of paying attention to it, and learning from and joining. Like both of us are members of, well, we're both members of the United States Racket Stringers
Mhm.
Association, and we're both members of the European Racket Stringers Association. And so I'm through those, I'm learning and meeting, really quite experienced stringers and racket technicians, and just continuing to learn and kind of evolve as a stringer. So it's been a nice journey so far.
Yeah, and starting out, it really doesn't take that much money to get yourself started. Of course, you need, some of the things that you need. We could talk about that a little bit. Like, okay,
Yeah.
so if you're starting this, of course, you have to figure out what kind of a business structure you're gonna start with, and that's kind of, we're not really going to talk about business structures, because we're not, can't give legal advice on starting your own business or whatever. But you just have to figure that out on your own. But go. Uh, Small business association or whatever can help you figure out whether you need to start an LLC or do it as a sole proprietorship, or however you want to do it. But if you do it in that kind of a fashion where you really take your mindset and say, basically, I'm going to start and I'm going to make this an official business, I think that kind of maybe helps you to get motivated to really treat it as a real business.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, then it also offers you the opportunity to get wholesale accounts,
Right.
because that's really probably the next way that you want to go, because buying at retail at first, that's not a problem if you're starting out small. Once you figure out the basic necessity of strings that you need, You can buy those at an online retailer at you know, get some of the things that are on sale. You know, when they have a 2-for-1 where, you know, buy two get one set free. You know, shop around to some of the different sites, because sometimes they'll have, a lot of times you'll kind of see many of the strings kind of are on sale together, because a lot of times that's coming from the companies themselves, right? They're putting
Right.
strings on sale for them, and so then some of that discount then comes back to you, or they just have too much inventory, and so they're trying to reduce their inventory because maybe a new string is coming out, and you know, the new line of strings is coming out, and so they want to kind of lessen their financial impact of some of the other strings, and so they'll, you know, give some discounts, and so you want to be looking for that initially, I think.
Yeah.
But once you establish it as a business, then you can have access to better pricing.
Yeah.
And some of the smaller companies, I think we've talked about this before, you can even go straight to the company and set up a small account, whether it's, you know, Solenco, whether it's MVP, MSV, MSV,
Right.
or, you know, Alpha, or even Gamma. I think Gamma used to be more of a smaller, you know, they'd open up a lot smaller accounts, and they
Right.
have great strings, right? We were talking about the Glide string last week, and of course you got the TNT series, you've got some of the multi-filaments there. You know, they've got a great line of strings.
Sure.
So, and something that people recognize, because I think initially when you get started, you really probably want to just start with some strings that everybody knows. Everybody, you know, the top selling strings in the industry, in the market, you know, that you're in, whether
Yeah.
it's in the US or the European market, which is going to be a little bit different, because most of our reference point is based on the US market, right? The stuff that we're
Yeah.
talking about. And so, you know, that's kind of where the reference that we're going off of. But, you know, so, you know, that's kind of the first steps right there, treating it as a real business, you know.
Yeah.
And I think aside from getting some string, getting a stringing machine, buying the stringing tools, then of course we start talking a little bit about the business side of it, the marketing, the
Mhm.
promotion. So I don't know, Brad, you want to touch on that a little bit? I think you have some
Yeah.
ideas. We talked about that
And
before.
I'm just going to add something to what you were saying there real quick is, so basically just to get started, like you said, you need a machine, which you can, you know, you can start out in a $200 to $500
Mhm.
budget and start with a basic machine. And then you need the string. So you could start out with maybe 4 or 5 different varieties of string, a couple nylons, a couple polyesters, whatever it is. You know, you probably don't need natural gut when you're starting out
No.
as a beginner stringer, but just some synthetic guts and polyesters, you're in good shape. And then, of course, you know, learn as much as you can about the business and practice a lot. So maybe get a couple cheap used rackets on eBay, or if you have some old around, and get used to working with different 16 by 19, 14, whatever it is, you know, 18 by 20, whatever the pattern is. Um, Practice a lot. And like Patrick said, you can get some really cheap strings. You might be able to get a 660-foot reel of synthetic gut for $30 on eBay or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you've got 16, 17, you know, sets
Yeah.
of string in that reel that you can practice on, because it
I
does take.
actually, I actually just bought. I actually just got a reel. I haven't gotten it yet, but I bought a reel from WD Strings, right, from UK, and I bought a 660 reel of a synthetic gut for, I think, 18.99. But
All right.
the reason that I bought it was for teaching purposes. When I
Mhm.
start working on stringing rackets on my machine, and I'm working on different techniques, a lot of
Yeah.
times for you know, newbies, you know, new stringers, starting with the synthetic is a good way to just learn the techniques, because then, you know, if you start learning how to string and you've got poly, you know, it's harder to weave a poly than it is. So I think it's just learning with synthetics is a little bit easier initially.
Yeah.
So I just bought a reel so that I can just basically use that to string, you know, for instructional purposes.
That was a great idea. That was a great idea. So anyway, so I was just adding to that. And where were we going? Where were you leading us to?
Oh, I was leading us. We were going away from the strings, and oh, we were talking a little bit about marketing, and we're
Oh
figuring
yeah.
out, okay, how do you get yourself out there?
Well, so there's a few ways that you can do it. Number one, if you're going to string, you probably I'm guessing you probably play a little bit of tennis too. Not
Yeah,
necessarily,
that's
but
I forgot to mention that earlier. I was going to say, I have only met one person who actually ran a tennis shop who did not play tennis.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of like a family kind of situation. It was he got involved and he ran a very successful shop, and it was just really funny. And the shop actually started out as more of a sporting goods. I mean, there's like a deer head that's hanging in the shop, and this is in Southern California, right? And he only throughout the years they only took cash. They never took credit cards, and he kind of got into it. And he wasn't really a tennis player, and so it was really odd because he was stringing at a tournament and stuff. He became a good stringer, but
Yeah.
it was just seemed kind of odd to me because how would you even get into this business if you weren't interested in tennis or you
Right.
weren't a player or you just had it, you love watching matches or whatever. But for somebody who's not into tennis to like own, operate, and actually string at tournaments, it just seemed kind of weird. But no, he was a nice guy and he did really well. He's a good stringer and he kind of learned to enjoy it, or he learned to, the industry as he had to.
I think
So,
that's interesting because if you look at any other sport, whether it be someone who strings lacrosse sticks, you figure they have a background in lacrosse. I specialize in sharpening ice skates. Well, you figure this person must have grew up ice skating or playing hockey or whatever. But
right.
anyway, I guess it's possible. But the majority of us who string are going to be players. So um, there's a few things you can do. Number one is I would get some business cards made up. All right, some just basic business cards with your business name. Come up with a little bit of a name for your business. Um, you're a racket stringer, tennis racket stringer, racket technician, whatever you offer as that business. Let's just say for now you're just going to be a racket stringer. So just phone number, email address. Yeah, you could put maybe on the back of the card a few of the strings that you carry. You could put your rates, although I tend to leave your rates off the card because they could change and then you're
Yeah.
stuck with 1,000 cards
Right,
left
and then
over.
and if people are just comparing prices to prices and you're not able to actually, sell who you are, then that could be detrimental, I think,
Yeah.
ultimately. So, um, you had a good idea a couple weeks ago, I think that you talked about, the QR code, and I was
Yeah.
thinking like that could be if you put your QR code on you put a QR code on your business
Business
card,
card. Yeah.
and then that takes you to like a PDF or like a PDF
All right.
paper
JPEG, whatever it is. Right.
where you put basically your bio, more about you, your interest in stringing and what you can do for your client, your customer,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of free sites out there where you can get a QR code that are free. Now, the
yeah,
only time I think there's a monthly charge for a QR code is if you have it attached to a website.
yeah.
But,
But
but
you
if
can
it's
like upload because I did go and check after you mentioned it last time, and
yeah,
sure, on several of the QR code sites, you can actually upload a PDF or a JPEG or whatever. Um, and then when somebody clicks on it, it just takes it right to that page, and you don't have to pay for it to be hosted or whatever. So,
totally. Yeah, you could put that on a bulletin board at the tennis club, at the parks, hang something up and, you
yep,
know, click here, learn more about my stringing business, whatever. But so that's a way to do it. Also at the tennis club, talk about your stringing. I would, if you're starting to look for clients now, there's some advantages to being a home stringer and there's some disadvantages. The advantages is you just don't have the overhead that a business shop would have. The disadvantages are that you don't have a business shop.
yeah,
There's not they're
yeah.
kind
You
of
don't
coming
have
to
the
your
foot
house,
traffic.
they're dropping it off. And also
Mhm.
a business owner will get tremendous discounts because they usually buy in larger quantity. So they're
Yep.
going to get the strings cheaper for you. So you've got to, as a home stringer, really do a little bit more legwork and try to find the deals. They're out there. And you
Hmm.
don't have to really break your back to find them. And you don't need to carry every type of string. So you might
Right.
find a really great deal. Say you found a super deal in this multi-filament. Well,
Yep.
grab it. You saved a lot of money and promote that string. So that's a good way to do it also
Yeah, and,
because
and we have somebody on the line too here that's commenting. Jim Kellogg. He was talking about that name sounds familiar, but I
oh, I
think
think he joined us the other day.
yeah, he joined us the other day, and he's got a couple good ideas, and we hadn't really got into a lot of that yet. But talking about drop-off locations, if you can work it out, I've seen this many times be successful because for people who know that they can just drop it off somewhere. Sometimes you can even, if you know of another retail store that's conveniently located somewhere, or a manager of some, even a flower shop or a just a retailer of some sort where somebody can drop off the rackets. You can create the labels. Maybe they can print the labels online, fill it out, put it on the racket. You could have a page where it just has, put your information in, and then they can just write it on a piece of paper what they want,
Yeah.
or you can connect with them later on. But yeah, having drop off locations, or if you have small clubs in your town that don't have a pro shop or don't have stringers, possibly that could be a drop off. If there's an attendant, if it's a sports club or something like that, that could be a drop off, and you can pick up, and you just have to have a consistent time where you pick up and drop off. So like make it every day at, let's say, 5 o'clock, you are picking up and you're dropping off.
Yeah.
Because that way people know if I bring it before 5 o'clock, I can probably expect it the next day. When you're first starting out, I think one of the most important thing is you really have to sell yourself and your service and your professionalism and your quickness, right? Because if you can turn around, I know it's going to be a lot of work at first, but if you can turn rackets around either the same day or the next day, you're going to be ahead of a lot of your retailers, out there, like
Right.
the big box stores. And initially, I think another thing Jim said was credentials, and I'm assuming he's talking about, what experience do you have? What do you have backing you? And here in the U.S., we talk about it all the time. The U.S. RSA is good for beginners because it at least gives you, even though you can join the U.S. RSA and you don't have to like show that you have any type of stringing skill. That doesn't come into play until you actually become a certified stringer, right? But you can join the USR. I see a lot of people will just put on their business card member of the US RSA, and really that just means that you paid some money and you joined the organization. But it's still good because then you have some connection with the industry, and you get newsletter, and you get you have
tips and
access to
tricks
some
and
discounts at a couple of the um, racket companies and string companies mostly. And then you have access to resources, and they also have an advertising site where you can advertise your business if you're a member online, so that if somebody's looking for a stringer in a certain zip code or something like that, then you would come up.
Yeah.
And another good, I think you brought it up once too, but Jim had also brought up meet the pros in your location, offer free stringing to the pros to get reference. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of teaching pros that string their own rackets, or they string the rackets for their clients. So that person might not be your market, but there's definitely teaching pros out there that don't do their own stringing. And so I think they would be good for connecting and getting customers. And you might have to give them free string jobs. That I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. No, that's a good point. I've done that here with a couple of the pros and just said, look, I'd be happy. They don't break their strings hardly ever, they're more feeding pros and stuff, the couple that I talked to, but that is a good idea. And communication is really important. I talked to a buddy of mine actually who tested me. He's become a friend since he tested me for the my MRT, and he's down in Florida now trying to, get some clients again. And someone emailed him the other day looking for a stringer in his area, and he got back to him like 4 hours later because he was on the golf course, and he said, "Oh, I already found someone else." So as Jim said, youngsters are used to like instant communication. So probably a text message is better than an email, and if you can get back to someone right away. We're so used to high speed everything that we want the answer before we've even asked the question. So it's important to communicate well and do that. And going back to the original point about drop off locations, and I don't know if you and I talked about this the other day or if I saw it or somewhere, but there's a lot of businesses everywhere that are struggling a tiny bit, and there's a lot of businesses that have extra space. So you may be able to, and a lot of businesses who probably would like a little traffic. So you might be able to go to a local business, whether it be a barber shop or somewhere, and they've got an empty corner. Hey, I have a stringing business. I can get some people coming in and out of your business, stringing rackets. Maybe you give them $2 for every racket you do. So
Mhm.
maybe they make an extra 50 bucks a week or 40
Yeah.
bucks. And you've got an actual location and you're at that location. You could say, I'm here stringing on these days. Or so, and if you're not there, the whoever's there, maybe you can work
I
with.
did that. That's funny that you bring that up. I actually did that when there was somebody here in my local town, and I live in a place that doesn't have a lot of tennis, and so I wasn't going to open up a retail location, just a standalone shop. It just wouldn't be
Right.
feasible. But there was a sporting goods store that opened up, just a small sporting goods store, and I just approached him one day and I said, hey, I string tennis rackets and this is what I do. And I was thinking, you don't really have much with tennis, but you might get a little bit. There's courts right across the street.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, I put my machine in there. I even had like meetups where like once a month I would invite people to come and I would talk about tennis strings and rackets and kind of just talk about the industry, have some snacks, that kind of thing. And that brought some people in. And then playing out on the public courts also helps. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not the place that you normally play, but you can kind of check it out, like go, because there's regulars, right? There's always regulars that come to those areas. And then once you figure out, what, I could probably put some of my business cards up here. Maybe not a big flyer that has a little slip of paper that that's, I don't like to use that. But business cards, just having them there, and people go, oh yeah, and then they can contact you, or at least use the QR code and connect.
Yeah. I
So
did
those
that.
that ended up working out. And so that's, especially if it's if maybe it's a business that either somehow might have the same clientele as you. It could even be a different industry, but it might have like somehow there's a connection, right? So people that
Yeah.
go into there would also be tennis players, or
Yeah.
possibly connect in that way. So you just got to be a little creative in that. But that is a really good point, especially nowadays when people are still trying to recover from the last couple years and stuff. So good
Yeah,
point.
and a few weeks, or sorry, not a few weeks ago, but probably 6 months ago, um, there's a park probably 4 or 5 miles from me, public city park here, and there's a lot of the same guys who are there playing, at weeknights or weekend nights, and there's probably 6 or 8 of them, and I know most of them just because I grew up in the area playing tennis for a long time, and so I went over to them one night. I ride my bike through there. It passes through the park down the canal trail. There's a canal behind my house, and so I can bike on the trail. It goes from Buffalo to Albany, which is like a 250 or 300 mile trail. So anyway, I mentioned to them, hey, I just started, I'm stringing rackets, and I've got a little business going. And I said, who does your racket stringing? And they mentioned a guy. He said, oh, our buddy Tim does it. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't know he was still stringing and stuff. So, Tim is a good guy. I've known Tim for a long time. So I called Tim and chatted for a few minutes. I said, look, Tim, I hear you're stringing quite a bit. And I just, wanted to let you know if I'm stringing also, if you ever have an issue, you're out of town, or, something comes up and you get overwhelmed and you don't have time, just, keep me in mind, and I'll do the same for you. If I travel, if I go somewhere, if I had a bit of an injury, I broke my collarbone this year, so to, you kind of can support one another, in ways like that. So, if Tim ever decided to go, he knows that, hey, I can call Brad, and he'll
You know,
string for it.
that brings up a good point, because a lot of times we consider somebody else that strings like our enemy, right? not
Right.
not really, but in some way you're like, oh man, that's our competition,
Right.
I- and so that also brings me to a point where I've been, I got to admit, I have um, done this in the past. Obviously I don't do it anymore, but there's been times in the past where somebody has come to you to string a racket, and you take a look at the racket, um, and you're like looking at the knots and you go, oh, this is just an awful job. Or you're just like going, oh man, who strung this? Oh yeah, I wouldn't do this. This is what I could do for you. And so you kind of like, you badmouth in a way, the other stringer by doing
Right.
that, right?
Right.
And so, I make it a point not to do that.
Yeah.
Sell yourself on what you can do, but don't badmouth anybody else's string jobs. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
that
people
is,
generally
that's
don't like that anyway. I mean, they may not tell you, but they don't really like that.
right. But you still hear people doing it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because people, stringers are very particular about their way of doing it, and they're very easy to criticize. I know too, when you're teaching people online stringing, or you're watching other tutorials, sometimes when you're reading some of the comments on there, people get pretty harsh, about certain things and stuff. So I mean, that's just how it is. But yeah, just keep in mind, how you want it to come back to you sometime, because we all make mistakes. And how do you want people to handle it when they see maybe a possibly,
Right.
you could have tied that knot a little bit, or it broke right there. Oh, that must have been a really crappy string job, or
Yeah.
whatever. So keep it, keep it professional. Keep, think about, um, we all make mistakes at times. It
Yeah.
just happens.
Well, I strung a racket for a woman probably, I don't know, sometime in the past year, and she was playing and the string broke near the grommet. And the coach who was teaching her told her, "Oh, they must not have tied the knot properly. The
Yeah.
knot came undone." So, she called me and was like, "Hey, the pro said, the knot came undone." I said, "Well, we'll bring it over. I'll redo it for you." I didn't say anything else, but when she got here and I did it, I showed her. I said, "Look, there's four knots. There's,
Mhm.
two pieces of string. All four knots are in place. So I think we must just have had something in the grommet, a piece of clay, something
Or you
sharp,
shanked it in
jagged."
that corner, because if you hit it in a certain spot, right? I mean,
Well, that's
everybody
what
breaks.
I said
We
too,
all break,
right.
but
Yeah, you can have a good miss hit there and pop a string easily.
right.
So but I redid it anyway, but I wanted to make it a point that, no, it wasn't the knot that came undone, but so
Mhm.
anyway, but it happened, and to me that was kind of in a way, the pro telling him that, well, he must not have tied the knots good enough. I mean, he obviously didn't even really know what he was talking about because they were all four knots were intact.
Yeah.
So,
But
but
I think the way that you handle each of those situations is what brings more credibility to you. Because if, you strung this racket for this person and they had a problem with it, whatever reason the problem, whether
yeah,
they shanked the ball, whether, somebody told them the wrong thing, you took care of it in a way that was mutual, beneficial. It maybe seemed like more beneficial to them, but ultimately that person's going to come back to you probably.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
I mean, yeah, right,
Think
right.
of a customer. Don't think of a customer as a $20 customer because you're stringing one racket for them. Think of that customer as, you know, somebody who potentially could give you $100 a year or more, right?
And
And
refer
referrals.
you to multiple people who are gonna
Yeah.
refer you to multiple people, so
Right. So don't think of them as a one-time, customer, because
yeah,
so,
and as a new stringer, someone who wants to get started, you have to really look at, like, what can you do that maybe the others aren't doing in my area? And if there's no one in your area, you're really lucky. But in most areas where there's tennis courts, you're gonna have some competition. So what can you do, that the competition isn't doing? And I don't recommend, like, stringing for free. You don't really want to start stringing for $5 a racket plus strings, or
yeah.
you want to keep a bit of a standard, or you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
But so I look at, like, what am I doing that's a little bit different? Um, and I don't really know what the competition is entirely doing, but I know that I communicate immediately, whether I get
Yeah.
text message or phone calls. It's usually, if not instantaneous, within minutes, usually. As long as it's not in the middle of the night. None of my clients are texting me at
Right.
2 in the morning, but so I my communication is really good. My turnaround is really fast, usually the same day, and I don't charge a premium for that. A lot do.
Yes, a
I
lot of people
don't.
do. They'll charge an extra $5 to have it done the same day.
And I don't do that, because it's something I think I can offer, and it doesn't put me out. If I can't
Yeah.
do it, I won't. I don't do it. But
Yeah.
a lot of times if I'm a little busy, I said, "Is tomorrow okay?" Or, "When would you like to pick it up?" But
Right.
a lot of times I get it done. I text them immediately, "Hey, no rush to pick it up, but your racket's done at your convenience." Another thing that I do is I have some plastic bags that are what are eco-friendly. I invested and paid a little bit of a premium for some bags. So on a
Yes, you did.
rainy
You paid probably they were what like what was it like?
25 cents
Yeah, something like
instead of
that, right?
7 cents a bag.
Right.
But
Oh,
they're
speaking
biodegradable.
Yeah, speaking of bags, before you go on, sorry, I don't want you to lose your train of thought on that, but I was listening to at Wimbledon they stopped using bags for the
Yes.
players.
Yep.
I guess for the last couple of years because of the eco-friendliness, and also companies like Head. When I listened to the presentation about all their new stuff, they're using biodegradable packaging materials now. They're being a lot more eco-friendly, and which is good. But yeah, I mean the bags, if they're biodegradable, and you have maybe new clients, or you're trying to promote your business, that's a great
Yeah.
way.
I use them always when it's raining. So if I have to hand someone their racket, I don't want them running back to their car and getting the racket all wet. So if it's raining, I'll put it in a bag. I tell them it's a biodegradable bag. When I have to deliver a racket, if I'm going to the tennis club and I know someone's going to be there, I put the racket in a plastic bag and put it in my tennis bag, so it's not
Mhm.
banging into my other rackets. There's a layer of the plastic between their racket, and then I'll take it out and give them the bag. But I also let them know, if I said, would you like it? Would you like a bag? You can use it for your sweaty shirt or whatever. And some of them like it once in a while, and it's just a simple, plastic bag. And another
Right.
thing I do is I put a
You
just a
got a
label
label.
on the
You got a
yeah.
label on there.
It
Right.
says my stringing business. It has my master racket technician certification logo. It has that I'm a member of the United States Racket Stringers Association, and a certified master racket technician. And I put my email address, phone number, and just a little quote about tennis. Tennis strings can drastically change the feel of your racket. Have me help you determine the best string for you and your style of play. So
Yeah.
just a little quote. And so that's something that I can do. I have a
Right.
little business card also that I keep in my wallet.
Right.
I had to go get a COVID test a few weeks ago. Or no, I'm sorry. I took my daughter, was it my son or my daughter? One of them had a little cold, so we
Mhm.
had to go get a COVID test where you pull in, and
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
then one of the nurses was a tennis player, and she
Oh,
recognized the name in town. And I mentioned that I'm stringing, and I happen to have a business card on me, so I gave her my business card, and she was so happy. So it comes in
mhm.
handy now.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm thinking about doing is well, another thing I did a couple days ago is I went on to Vistaprint. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever heard
That's
of
where
this.
I always go to. Yeah, they're great. I was going to mention them. I'll
So
put a
they
link.
have,
I'll put the link down.
yeah, we'll have to put a link for Vistaprint. Their prices are good. So I bought a 5x7 photo stock, like a card stock, right?
Mhm.
And on the front, I put a picture of me with my machine and the strings behind me, holding a racket. I put a little bit about me and my certifications, and I'm a member also of the United States Racket String Association, the European Racket String Association. Um, I put on the back, or on the front, I also listed all the string brands I carry. Um, and on the back, I had a picture of my stringing machine that I use, the Wilson Bayardo, and I wrote down that your racket was strung on a Wilson Bayardo. This is one of the premier stringing machines in the world. It's been used at the Australian Open, French Open, and the U.S. Open, as well as many other ATP, WTA tournaments. Um, and I wrote a couple other things. Oh, and on the front, I left a little spot that before where it says your racket was strong, and I can put like dear John or dear Mary, thanks for having me. Or, yeah, I think it starts out thanks for having me string your racket, or thanks for trusting me
Cool.
to
Yeah,
string
you
your
really
racket.
personalized it. Yeah.
Yeah, personalized. So there's a blank spot where I can handwrite their name. And so now they're going to understand the machine that I'm using for their racket, which they don't necessarily know. But now
Mhm.
they'll know a little bit more, and it becomes more personalized. Wow, Brad's
Now,
really
is
into
this a
this
business? Is this a business card size, or is it bigger?
5x7.
And
So
so what? Okay.
this will
What?
be when I hand a client the racket. I'll say, look, I
Oh,
wanted to just share, give you this one time. It's a little bit about my certifications and the machine that your racket was strung on, and just so they can learn a little bit more and kind of understand how much I, you know, care about the stringing business and stuff.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. You'll have to send me one of yours so I can see
yeah,
what it looks like.
I
But
should get it
Vistaprint
this
is
week.
really
So
good for that. Like Vistaprint is really good for that. I think another thing along that line is, when your car is sitting in the parking lot of tennis courts,
right,
you're going to get a lot of tennis players walking back and forth. Maybe if in their mind they're thinking of, or they weren't thinking of it, but if they saw something that reminded them about racket stringing or somebody who strings rackets, if you had something on your car like a magnet
yeah,
on your car, and Vistaprint, I've had something like that printed from Vistaprint before. They'll print like a 8 by 11 or 12 by 15 magnet with whatever you want on the front, for maybe, I don't know, 10, 15, $20 maybe. But you
yeah,
put one of those on both sides of your car when your car's sitting in the parking lot, that might draw, you might get some business from that.
yeah, for sure. And it, like I said, it only takes one to get
Mhm.
another and another and another and
Yeah.
another.
Just
So
I guess that's a good point. Work really hard getting those first initial contacts with people. You're gonna have to work extra hard. Another thing is you want to have people coming back to you for reasons other than maybe stringing all the,
mhm,
and one way to do that is after you string the racket for somebody, write down the reference tension that you collected based off of using your tennis meter or your mini SST, which I have here, which is an electronic one, and I know
mhm,
you have
app,
the gamma mix one too. Basically, you put it on your string bed in different places, and then you can get a reference number for the tension, and then you can write that down next to the stringing tension that you strung and what
yeah.
date, and then you can check that racket again a day later or an hour later or a week or a month, and then um,
Well, the
figure out
reference tension is
percentage.
the tension you're pulling it at, the
Yeah,
actual tension.
exactly. Right.
Yeah,
So that way you can, figure out how much tension that you've lost.
right,
And once you lose, 20 to 40% of your tension, it might be time to, restring again. Especially one, Jim Kellogg he was asking another question regarding what did you learn at the string conference, and there's so much that we learned, I think, from the string con. I haven't even watched all the episodes because I wasn't able to make them all
yeah,
live. But one thing that I did learn is when I think it was the guy from Head that was talking about hybrids, and you really need to tell people, like, I mean, you really need to educate. Number one, of course, we know that you got to educate people about hybrids and so forth, but the idea that having arm problems isn't something that just happens like on from Tuesday to Wednesday. All of a sudden, you've got arm problems, right? It's a gradual thing. It happens slowly most of the time, right?
right.
Unless, of course, you did something to like to really create an injury
Yeah.
right
Do
away.
you
But tennis elbow is something that happens over time. So if you're losing, you play with polyester, but you only string it once a year or once every 6 months. Once you've lost all of that playability in that string and all of the arm benefit that the string initially had, and that wears off, and you're still playing with the string, you could potentially be doing harm to your arm because
yeah.
you're not stringing well enough. And so in a way, you can be helping people to be able to play tennis longer because you're going to be able to help them tune up their rackets as they need. So,
Yeah,
so
that's a good idea. I didn't see I think that was Noel from Sydney, Australia, you may be talking about. I think was he the one that did that presentation, or were the two people from Head?
that might have been Noel. That might have been Noel. Everything's running a little blurry right now because I'm
Yeah, so I
watching
listened to the
a bunch
Dunlop
of different
one.
presentations, but no, that could have been from it. But I think that's kind of important because that way you can just you can connect with people more often. Like, hey, bring your racket back and I'll check the tension for you to see, make sure it's still working for you.
That's a good idea, or if you go to the tennis club, bring your tension check in your
Yeah.
bag, and if you see someone you strung for, "Hey, let's see where you are today. It was this last time." I think
Mhm.
that's a really good idea. I listened to the, Dunlop, presenter this morning, and that was interesting to see how they're really trying to rebrand and become a name again in tennis. They've lost a lot to some of the other big names, Babolat, Head,
Yeah, they have.
Wilson and stuff. But Dunlop is trying very hard to get back in with stringing. So they've come up with a new color system for their strings this year. I think any black and blue multi or polyester pack, any black and blue package means it's a polyester string, and the other color package is all multi-filament. So now you can
Mhm.
just see the color of the package and know, well, you don't really have to read it yet. You can look at the polyester section. They're stringing it a lot of tournaments. They're really they've got an excellent tennis ball out now. I bought a case of their the Dunlop Australian Open official ball a few months back, and just
Right. They
opened.
do a lot with tennis balls because they I think they're the official Australian Open and a few other Aussie
Yeah,
tournaments as
it's an
far as official
excellent
ball.
ball, really
Yeah,
excellent
obviously.
ball.
Um, and I think that would be hard getting in as an official ball because all the balls play so different. And for players, they start to like, because for however long, remember Penn and Pro Penn and Wilson, right? Wilson would dominate a lot of the tournaments, and so I always thought in when I my uh, history with the Dunlop ball, I always thought that they were a heavier ball, but
Mhm.
I guess that was just I
I
don't know. It's
well,
been a while since I played with them.
they vary. They vary, and the reason I like the Wilson U.S. Open, I just love the weight.
Yeah.
But the Dunlop ball, it felt so good, almost similar to the Wilson U.S. Open. But one thing I didn't realize until I became a hitting partner was that the women use a lighter ball than the men, and so I never really knew that or paid attention to that. So whenever I was hitting in 1997 with Jan and Novotny, we would use lighter balls. So if we ever went and got balls, we had to make sure we got a certain kind of
Oh,
ball.
gotcha.
And at the U.S. Open, when we were practicing, the the women's ball, they all would say like Wilson U.S. Open, but then they'd have the actual logo of the U.S. Open, like the ball and kind of the flame behind it.
Yeah, right.
And the women's flame was red and the men's flame was black. So if we were practicing next to someone in the men's draw, I would know if their ball rolled over to my court or vice versa. So I would just hit
Oh,
them
yeah,
the
yeah.
back flip,
Okay, that makes
and they'd
sense.
hit me the red. So it was kind of interesting that the women used a bit of a lighter ball.
Right.
But it's a huge business, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
tennis ball business and stuff. But
Mhm.
um, so
Okay,
anyway, that
so
was
I guess, yeah, so bringing it back to, okay, I guess we should give a couple more, like, really valuable tips, and this is kinda like the topic today was kinda starting your streaming business, right?
yeah,
So we talked about, kind of maybe just the basic stuff that you need, a machine, even something, a drop weight, flying clamp kind of, system like the Clipper made, or a simple gamma machine, or something like that, maybe $300-400, because right now you really don't know what you really want in your gear. So maybe just buy a low end one so that you can learn the stringing business, learn how to string, string your own rackets for a little while, get some of your friends to, let you string the rackets for them, then kind of create a part-time business. Go out there, go out to the parks, go out, make sure people know who you are, have a business card, the QR code. You don't even need a website. Use Facebook, right? We
yeah,
haven't talked much about social media. Maybe we should, I guess, for the next
yeah.
10 minutes in our podcast here, until we, for the remainder, maybe we should talk a little bit about, how we market ourselves in social media, because I
Yeah,
guess nowadays that's the way to go, right?
good idea. And last two more quick points is join the USRSA, become a member. You're going to learn a ton. Or if you're not in the US, join the European Racket Stringers Association. It helps to be a member. If you're associated with them, it gives you some credibility, but also learn from them, because people will figure out real quick whether or not you know what you're talking about. One thing I learned is I've become a pretty decent tennis player. Um, but there are some tennis players that I string for that aren't great, not even very good, but they know a ton about string technology and racket technology.
It's funny,
So,
huh?
right? It's like, my word.
It's funny
So,
how much a 3.0 player knows about strings, right?
yeah, yeah. And then here's another really good tip that you could do is on those business cards. Like I said, early on, Patrick and I said he just bought a set of a reel for like 19 bucks or
Yep.
18 bucks, right? So that's That's all just a little over $1 a set,
Yep.
right? And so if you need to get clients, and the problem with public courts and stuff is you're not going to get a lot of string breakers. You really, it's great if you can get to a performance player because they're the ones that are going to be breaking strings a lot. But at the parks and stuff, never compromise on your service fee. So figure out what that is,
Yep.
whether it's 15, 20, 10, whatever you can do in your market. Never waver on that, but you can say, look, I'm new in town, or I've got a new stringing business. I'm willing to give you a free string job, uh, but not including the service. So you got to pay for my service. I'll throw in the string. And so
Yep.
if you get a reel for $1, 18 bucks or even 30, 40 bucks,
Mhm.
you're just paying me my $15. I'll throw in the string for free. And now you've got a client, and do that to like for 10 people or whatever, 16, you've got 16 free strings in that reel or whatever. Make that part of your marketing.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you live in a town that actually has a tennis shop or has a retail sporting goods store where you can buy tennis strings, by package,
Yeah.
that could be your second, your go-to if by chance somebody wants something very specific, right?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
comes to you and goes, don't just say, oh no, I don't have that. This is what I have. Figure out, kind of know what the, like, let's say, I don't know, there's a lot of Sports Authority, or there's Dick's Sporting Goods, or those kind of places. Sometimes they'll sell you a set of string in a takeout, right? You can take a set of string out. It might cost you a little bit more, but the idea is, if you have a client and they want a certain string and they don't have their own string, then at least you can get a set so that you can get that business, right? And
Yeah.
then next time, knowing like, hey, do you always play with the string? Do you like the string? Okay, well, in that case, you're gonna stock that string for that, because if that person likes that string, maybe somebody else does too, but you're gonna have that string in stock for that player, at least have some of it. So
Yeah.
for future
And
reference.
you may find out that you've got 4 people who all love Hyper G.
Hmm.
And let's say you get 16L in, you carry 16L. The 16L Hyper G is 1.25 millimeters.
Hmm.
And then you get those 4 people who come to you, and one of them's going to want the 1.15 millimeter, another one's going to want the 1.20 millimeter, and the other one's going to want the 1.3 millimeter. And you don't
Hmm.
have any of them, but you just stocked up on Hyper G and you chose 16L. So you can't stock up everything. You can get the popular ones, and you're going to have to say, look, I have Hyper G. I just don't have the gauge you're asking for. We can put this gauge in it, and I can string it a little bit looser tension, so it kind of matches what a thinner gauge might be a little bit better. But but it's hard to carry everything. But just be convincing and tell them why this is why you got the 16L, or this
Yeah.
is why you got the 17.
Hmm.
My suggestion is the multifilaments have a little bit thicker, and the polyesters have, a little bit thinner, 1.2, 1.25. So,
Yeah, and as you start learning more, when you're getting your business started, I would definitely encourage you to like learn more about string technology, right? That's easy enough. Go to the big websites, for Babolat or Head or Wilson, and they have information there about technology. Sometimes they even have videos about their technology. And so
yeah,
learn about string technology, learn about how strings are made, learn about how rackets are made, and learn about racket technology, because
yeah,
that way you can at least speak that language when you're talking to somebody about stringing, because you've got to have some background, and you really need to have more background than the person that you're stringing for, so that you can actually help them get to the next level based on whatever their what their goals are. And that's
yeah.
another, find out what the goals are of the kind of string that player is looking
Yeah,
for.
know what Nadal uses, know what Federer. The more you can educate yourself, it's just, it's good to know a little bit. Know a little bit of the history of the strings. Know a
Mhm,
little bit of the history of tennis stringing.
mhm.
It's just gonna make you more confident. You want to be able to educate and just be able to carry a conversation if someone brings it up. Hey, how
Yeah,
long have Luxilon strings been around? Well, or how long have polyesters? Luxilon introduced them in the early 90s, but they didn't really take off until Querton won the French Open. And when they asked him,
you're right.
I credit the polyester string or whatever. Know a little bit about the natural guts, how they're made. They're not cat guts.
Yeah, you're
Don't
right.
continue that myth.
Right,
You know.
right.
So
And then once you get to that point, then you can start thinking about, okay, um, to get more credibility, maybe I need a better machine to get more credibility, because there is a difference between, people can tell at a certain level, you can start telling if your machine, if your racket was strung on a constant pole machine, meaning electronic machine, or a drop weight, or a crank kind of machine. And so I think
Well, yeah,
Jim brought up a good point regarding using the wise head for replacement and lockout machines. So if you have a decent lockout machine or even a drop weight, you can also convert a lot of the drop weights to the wise head. But the big factor is, if you're going to maybe look at, you have a better chance if you have a good turntable. If you have a 6-point turntable on a drop weight and putting that wise head on, all of a sudden you have a decent machine.
yeah, right.
And for $600, you're set. And
That's
and you know and that's a machine that continually gets updated. I think that wise head, because I think it's had several iterations of, generations of that, and I think we've
okay.
talked about it before. And it's a it has a lot of good features on it. It's all electronic, and it basically just turns your manual machine into an electronic constant pull machine. So it's
Yeah,
great.
it is great. And
Mm.
back to the social media, I think that's,
Oh
you know,
yeah, that's what we
really
were talking
important
about.
also, get yourself, an Instagram account, get
Yep.
yourself a Facebook page. You can even do a little Facebook business and start sending it to your buddies, promoting your business, um, pictures of your stringing machine, a little bit about yourself, and you might be able to grow your business that way. There's a
Because you can
lot of
market that locally. Because you can market that locally,
yeah,
right? With
you
with
can market it
Instagram, you
locally.
kind of you can position it so it's local. Yeah.
And there's a lot of Facebook groups out there
Yeah.
related to tennis stringing and just racket stuff, and you can learn a lot and just kind of read a lot. And as you read some of it, you're going to learn some things. And look at the YouTube videos. There's a lot of good YouTube videos out there too. But make sure you're ready before you go out there and start a stringing business. It takes some practice and experience. So, if it means you string for free a little bit, I love photography, and I used to love going to different events and shooting. And for the first 2 years, I would just email or call the promoter on the poster and say, "Hey, I'd be happy to shoot your event for free." And that way, if I blew it, I didn't feel so bad. They didn't pay me anyway.
Yeah.
But I'd shoot the events for free. I'd give them the photos on a CD-ROM or CD, and I got a ton of free experience, and I got to see some great bands. I got to see some great sporting events. And then when I got comfortable, then I start charging some. So
Well, okay, so how would you position that then? Because earlier you said also that, you don't want to give it away for free. You don't want to be doing it stringing for free. You don't want to
right.
be, heading that. And then, you need to don't discount your labor. So how can you, do some of that for free and not compromise,
Well, I guess
the
I
long
should have been more clear. This is pre you going into business.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is before you've actually gone into business. You don't want
Right.
to just go into business and learn on the first day,
No.
right? So this is just as you're preparing. If you're not quite confident, not quite comfortable yet,
Yeah.
maybe you start and you're only stringing for your cousin and your
Yeah.
uncle and your brother, and after you do them a few times, and you're practicing on your own quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but if you want to do it before you go into business and offer some friends stuff, if you give me the string, I'll do it for you. Do it for a year or so. It just depends on where you are
Mhm.
in your stringing. I certainly wouldn't have gone into business the first week learned to string. You
And
know,
and and when you're initially learning to string, it is important to buy a set of a reel or something that you can practice with, because you can't just wait for rackets to come in, like, okay, well, I'll just practice on my own racket once a month, or I'll practice on my own racket once every 2 months when it's time
just
to re
let me
when it's
grab
time.
something here. One
Oh yeah,
sec.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
sure.
just want You might have one
Just
handy.
carry, all right, I'll just answer Jim's. Let's see. Always carry a second racket with a good hybrid setup and offer to let people. Yeah, that's good. Jim had a good point on carrying extra rackets with you that maybe are strung with some hybrid, like for somebody who maybe have one strung with a poly, have one strung with a hybrid, and so people
Yeah,
can try. They're not gonna. It might still feel a little bit different, but they can, if you have it strung right, you can kind of show them what.
that's a good idea. Instead of them having to redo theirs just to see how something feels, it
Yeah,
won't be the
yeah.
same, but give them an idea. What I went to get was,
Oh yeah,
this is a really important book, and I would recommend, if you join the USRSA, every year you'll get this book in the mail, and it
yeah,
essentially has every racket pattern
yeah.
out there. So, it'll tell
When
you
you're
exactly.
starting, when
Yeah.
you're starting, you need that, because I remember when I was learning how to string, sometimes I'm looking at a racket going, I don't know, those outer two look a little further apart. Is that really the hole? So at first that was really helpful.
Yep. And another thing that we didn't really get into, but the the um the tester who certified me suggested that every time I string a racket for someone, go on the website rackettech.com, or I think, is it
Yeah, it's
rackettech.com?
Racket Tech. I think it is Racket Tech. Yeah.
But it's essentially, it's got everything that's in this book you can get online also, right?
Mhm.
So I'll go on the Racket Tech, find the racket, find the pattern, copy and paste it onto a Word document, and I print it. And I write my client's name on that, and I put it in a 3-ring binder. So every time I string their racket, I don't have to thumb through all these pages. I see their name, and I can see exactly the pattern and the knots to skip, and which side of the, if there's a short side on this, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a good idea to have. I have a booklet of, I don't know if I have 65, 70 clients now that I string for. So it
Mhm.
saves me a ton of time, that I can just open that book up, because a lot of times the clients will cut the strings out for me and just
Right.
hand me the rackets.
Yeah.
So now I can kind of look at just in my sheet, and it tells me, okay, skip here. I need this much. And
Right.
another thing is, organization is key. I have a um, Microsoft Excel,
Right.
and I have every client, every time I string a racket, the date, the name, the racket, the tension, um, the
Mhm.
dynamic tension,
Yep.
the whether or not, if they want a vibra dampener. I offer um, rubber bands.
Mhm.
A lot of people here love the rubber bands for their vibration dampener.
Does
So
the same job. Yep, does the
I
same
have
job.
3 different color rubber bands, so to match the rackets. I have red, green, and blue.
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
and then and so I put that, and then I have a section for notes. Like, I strung a racket earlier today. The part of the bumper guard was missing, and the racket had been scraped, and you can see it was getting pretty thin. So I just make a note that's what was going on.
Mhm.
So just have these great records. It makes life so much easier. If they may come to you and say, "Hey, what'd you string my racket for six
Right.
months ago?"
Yeah.
No problem. I keep great records. I'll look and I'll let you know. Or, what did
And
I put in there?
yeah, exactly. And you don't need to, buy an expensive software, because we know now that there are a number of software packages specifically for tennis
Right.
business. There's one, if you string at a lot of tournaments, and you string at a large, if you need a large database, right?
Yeah.
Then there's ones like stringjob.com, which is geared toward the home stringer, even, because you can get a free account, as long as, I think it allows you to have 20 or 50 uh, clients in there. And then it also sets up an email system where you can then automatically email them if you want, maybe even text. Or I'm not sure. I haven't gone on there for a little while, because right now I'm not using that system. But
They
they
charge
have,
a monthly fee.
yeah. No,
So if you have it,
they have a free one. There's a free one as well, with that. You can do
oh,
the
but
free program as long as you only have like 50 clients. But then once you go beyond that, then you have to pay $5 a month, and then there's a bigger one as well. So there's some options there. But
yeah,
but I think starting out, having them cataloged on a spreadsheet is probably sufficient.
yeah, it works great for me. I'm so glad I do that, and it's really nice. So now I can search. If you do it on Excel, you can search. Oh, Bob's coming over. I just unclick every other name, and only Bob's history shows up.
Right.
And it's really nice. Now, if you have some high performance players, what I've been suggesting to them lately is to label their rackets. I have one girl that I string for, who plays a lot of tournaments all over the world, and she numbers her rackets, and I think that's a great idea. So we know what racket we've strung how many times, or we've strung the
Yeah.
number 2 racket 7 times and the number 1 racket, 22 times. Or it's just a good idea to high performance players to number your rackets, keep
Yeah.
track of your rackets, which ones are getting the most use, things like that. So if you don't want to
Yeah.
write on the racket, write
Yeah.
on a little
That's a
piece
good
of
one.
tape.
And so, investing in a label printer, label maker is important. And I don't mean the little portable one would work. The ones that you buy for like $25, the
Yeah.
Brother or other brands, that just print out. You can type in the tension and the date and all that. But the ones I'm talking about that I've seen for $59, it's a little square box, and it connects. You can connect it with your iPhone and basically create your own label with a
Hmm.
little logo on it. You could probably even put the QR code on there if you wanted to, and then put whatever description you want, even their name. Some
Yeah.
people you put their name on there because then it's not only uh, it kind of, in case you left your racket on the court or whatever, somebody finds it, they might know whose racket it is, so it creates that additional
Yeah.
thing. So it's an additional little add-on bonus or whatever, for your customer. But yeah,
And it
so
gives them a reminder that you strung it. They might not remember, like,
exactly,
"Oh, who strung this?" You could have your phone number on it even, or just your name.
yeah,
So that's a great idea.
right. So so for $60 you can invest in a pretty decent little printer. I'll put that in the description once I get that all done. Hopefully sometime tonight I'll write a detailed description and stuff. So
It's
I mean, I
you
think
can
we
get
gave some good I think we gave some good tips to kind of get started. I think we can continue that conversation, but maybe some more advanced things as well. Maybe we should just end it. I don't know, unless you have any other specific tips you want to give. We can end it on did you buy anything this week?
Oh, yeah, there you go. And Jim mentioned you can get a lot of rubber. You must be a banker. I don't know.
I
That's a
know
good
it's
idea.
like
Rubber
getting.
bands and paper clips. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
banks give away too much free stuff, since you can't even, it costs you just to have money in banks.
I
So
know that.
it's
So this
ridiculous.
week, gosh, what did I buy this week? I bought some head links string. I have one client who likes head links.
Hmm.
So I ordered some head link string. I ordered a reel.
Hmm.
So that should be here within hopefully by, I think between the 8th and the 12th, they said. Um, so that's it for me this week.
Well, yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead. Are you?
No, that was
Oh,
all
well,
I
that was
bought
it.
this week.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for my WD string order, which is coming in a couple days, and it was amazing how cheap the shipping was all the way from the UK.
Is this your first order from them?
Yeah, yeah,
Good.
it's my first order. So it's crazy. But anyway, so that one doesn't count because I don't physically have it. But I did order because like with tennis elbow, I've been having, issues over the years and stuff. And so I finally found something that I got this exercise bar. It's like this really hard rubber thing
I
where
have one. It comes in different colors,
yeah, and it comes in different densities too, as far as medium,
firmnesses.
their strengths, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a lightweight one, a medium, and a
I have
hard
the
one.
green one.
Yeah, so I got this one, and it's great because you can start to like strengthen your, there's different exercises that you can do with it. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be using this uh, quite often, and hopefully I can see some results because I really need to strengthen those areas because that's where, that carpal tunnel, and then just the muscles in my arm and stuff, and
That's
just
the
all this.
number one tool now for tennis elbow out
Who
there.
is it?
Yeah, there's great YouTube videos on that, and all the physical therapists that I've looked at, because I've had tennis elbow issues, you see videos with that. It's awesome. So you may want to put that in the description also if anyone's
Yeah,
looking for
I
something.
think I will, and you know what? I'm going to watch some of those videos just to make
Yeah.
sure I do it right. But and the last thing I bought was you probably know what these are, but I was at a secondhand store and where people take their items and then they get a percentage back once it's sold and all that, right? Consignment. And there was this bag and it said Gamma a portable teaching cart on the bag, right? So I'm thinking, oh, cool, it looks brand new. So I opened it up, and sure enough, it was the teaching cart. That you it's a portable Gamma teaching cart, and that turns into take it on the court and has wheels on it and
Tennis
stuff,
ball.
but it's
Yeah.
portable. And it was half off because nobody had bought it, right? And so I couldn't find the cover to it first. Like the part that you put inside actual the structure, because
Yeah.
it folds up, right? And so I couldn't find it. I'm like, oh, maybe that's why it's sitting here. Nobody bought it, because it's missing that. But then I
Yeah.
look around I look around everywhere, and somebody probably opened it up and left that part sitting there. So
Oh.
it was complete. It was brand new. Nobody had ever used it, and I got it for like $20, and that's like
They
a
go
hundred.
for around $100.
I looked on Amazon, and they're 150 or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So now I can take my kids out a little bit more, because before I just have the hopper, that we would
Yeah.
use in court, and so I can just put this in the back of the car, have the balls in it, and just put it out there, and I can move it around, and for $20, I'm like, yeah, I scored on that deal, I think so.
Oh, that's
So
great.
that was my find of the week. That, and of course the exercise bar I'll be using. So
Yeah. Great.
but yeah, I guess that's probably it for today. We'll come up with something good for next week, right? Maybe
Sounds good.
keep up with the weekends.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, if anybody has any comments or suggestions, please leave that in the comment section. And I know a lot of folks that watch the videos don't subscribe, so make sure that you subscribe, and that way you'll get notified when these videos come out. And that's it. That's all I have today. Brad, thanks again for joining me, and we'll try to get some new guests on as well. It's just hard to coordinate the time sometime, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate it. I'll
All
see
right.
everyone soon.
See you.